You are promoted. The moon had long since risen by the time Inigo and Lyra stepped out of La Farines, the lingering warmth of their shared meal still wrapping around them like the final note of a song. The streets of Alandra had quieted, though not completely. Couples strolled under lamplight. The occasional carriage rumbled down cobbled roads. A bard played a gentle tune near the plaza, his lute echoing against the stone. That was different, Lyra said softly as they walked. You didn't hate it, Inigo replied with a small grin. No, she admitted. I didn't. They walked in companionable silence until they reached the outer ring of the district where the inns were located. There they paused. I'll see you tomorrow? Inigo asked. At the guild, she confirmed. Bright and early. He gave a casual wave, turning for his own inn, though something in the look she gave him lingered behind his eyes for the rest of the night. The next morning came brisk and clear. Inigo stepped into the Adventurers Guild with Lyra just behind him. The front hall was already busy. New quests pinned to the board, adventurers bargaining for shares, and guild staff bustling behind the counter. Elise, her hair neatly tied and expression sharp as ever, waved them over the moment she spotted them. The guildmaster wants to see you both, she said. He mentioned it last night before closing. Inigo raised an eyebrow. Both of us. Elise gave him a nod. Apparently your kobold job made quite the impression. They passed through the guild corridors, deeper into the administrative wing. Beyond thick oaken doors, Guildmaster Halric Thorn sat behind a heavy desk carved from ancient ironwood. He looked up as they entered. Ah, Thorn greeted, his voice deep and weathered. Inigo Velasquez, Lyra Artheniel. I've been waiting. He gestured for them to sit. I reviewed the reports from Elise, the Guildmaster said. 2 successful completions, 1 C-rank goblin subjugation, 1 A-rank kobold extermination. Both handled with efficiency and minimal collateral damage. He pulled open a drawer and retrieved a small velvet-lined box. Opening it revealed a polished silver badge. Inigo Velasquez, by the authority of the Alandra Adventurers Guild, you are hereby promoted to silver rank. Inigo accepted the badge with a quiet nod, the weight of it heavier than expected. Recognition wasn't something he chased, but in this world, every step up was survival. Lyra glanced at him with something between pride and relief. Thorn continued. Furthermore, I've been informed the 2 of you worked as an unofficial team on both missions. That's right, Inigo said. And I would like to formalize that, Lyra added. I want to join him permanently. We fight well together. Better than most full parties I've seen in this hall. Eh? Thorn leaned back, folding his hands. So be it. Have you chosen a party name? Inigo glanced at Lyra, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. He thought for a moment as he couldn't resist her beaming eyes. Ebon Vanguard, he said finally. Thorn raised an eyebrow. Ebon, as in shadow or steel? Both, Inigo replied. We move in the dark. The enemy not going to see us coming. I like it, Lyra said simply. Thorn nodded and turned to Elise, who had quietly followed them in with her ledger in hand. See to it. Register them officially. They'll be operating under the Ebon Vanguard name effective immediately. Elise's quill scratched across parchment. Done. Good, Thorn said. Now that you're silver and a registered party, you'll be receiving higher tier assignments. Dangerous, yes, but rewarding. And based on what I've seen, I expect good things from you. The Guildmaster rose and extended a hand. Welcome to the next tier. Inigo stood and shook it. We won't disappoint. Back in the guild hall, the shift was already evident. Adventurers looked at him differently now, some with nods of respect, others with narrowed eyes of competition. Lyra stood beside him with the same quiet confidence, her bow slung behind her back and silver hair cascading over her cloak. You realize, Inigo said, this means we'll probably start getting even crazier jobs. I don't mind, she said, so long as you're there to watch my back. He smiled. Always. Elise stepped up from behind the counter with a parchment in hand. And, here's your first mission offer as Ebon Vanguard. A scouting party reported unusual activity near the Windspire Cliffs. Rumors of wyvern sightings. It's B rank and pays 2 gold up front. Inigo whistled low. Wyverns already? You don't have to take it right away, Elise said with a smirk. But I figured you might want something with teeth. Lyra took the parchment and rolled it neatly. We'll consider it. Elise leaned forward slightly. And Inigo? He turned. Congratulations. You've earned it. There was something honest in her tone. Not the polite professionalism she used at the counter, but something personal. He gave her a small nod of appreciation. Thanks, and thanks for putting up with us. I'll be here when you get back, she said, returning to her post. As they walked toward the main doors, Lyra nudged him lightly. So what now? We shop for gear, restock supplies, maybe get new clothes. I'm tired of looking like I only own 2 shirts. Lyra actually laughed. A soft, musical sound. I can help you pick. Dangerous offer, Inigo said with mock suspicion. I have terrible taste. It's fine by me. They stepped out into the bright mid-morning sun. The city alive with its usual bustle, vendors calling out specials, students in mage robes rushing past with armfuls of scrolls, and armored guards patrolling the streets with relaxed demeanor. Inigo adjusted the new silver badge clipped to his cloak. Silver rank, a party name, and wyverns on the horizon. Not bad for a week's work. Lyra glanced sideways at him. You think the next mission will be tougher? Oh, definitely, he said. But hey, Ebon Vanguard doesn't back down from a challenge. Saw the Nellfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. She smiled. You are the first human that made quite an impression on me. Shopping and realization. The streets of Alandra bustled with late-morning life as Inigo and Lyra walked side by side, navigating between merchants setting up fresh displays and townsfolk running errands. The markets were vibrant, rows of stalls overflowing with dyed fabrics, glimmering accessories, and the unmistakable scent of freshly baked goods drifting through the air. I feel underdressed, Inigo muttered, tugging lightly at his worn shirt. Lyra glanced at him, lips tugging into the faintest smile. You look like a mercenary who forgot which war he was supposed to be in. Exactly my point. They turned a corner into the tailor's district, a quieter stretch of storefronts where the colors were richer, and the clientele dressed a little too sharply to be adventurers. One shop caught Lyra's eye, a glass-front boutique with a silver-embroidered sign that read The Gilded Thread. This one, she said, already stepping toward the entrance. You sound too confident about this. Trust me, if you're going to represent Ebon Vanguard, you shouldn't look like a stray dog. Inside, the boutique was cooler. The scent of pressed linen and polished wood strong in the air. Bolts of cloth lined the walls, ranging from simple browns and blacks to deep royal blues and shimmering silvers. A middle-aged woman with spectacles perched on her nose greeted them with a practiced smile. Adventurer wear? She guessed, eyeing Inigo. Upgraded adventurer wear, Lyra said smoothly, stepping in front of him. He needs something durable, practical, but not completely savage. The tailor raised an eyebrow at Inigo, who gave her a resigned shrug. I just go where I'm told. Within minutes, Inigo found himself ushered behind a curtain while a set of fitted clothes were brought to him. A dark gray long coat with reinforced stitching, high-collar tunic with silver accents, sturdy charcoal pants tucked into new black boots. It all felt unfamiliar, too polished, too refined. He stepped out. Lyra looked him over once, then again, more slowly. You clean up surprisingly well. Inigo turned, examining himself in the tall mirror. Not bad, he admitted. Still feels weird not having dirt on me. You'll live. They paid. Well, Inigo did, dropping several silvers on the counter without blinking. The guild bonus for the Kobold quest had left him comfortable enough to splurge a little. As they exited, Inigo glanced at Lyra, who walked with that usual elegant grace that made her look like she belonged in ballrooms instead of caves. Want to grab something to eat? He asked. You just bought clothes. Isn't that enough for one day? He grinned. I was thinking dessert. She tilted her head. Dessert? Come on. I saw a stand near the plaza yesterday. Let's see if it's still there. They navigated through the midday crowd until they reached the merchant square, and just as Inigo hoped, the crepe stand was still there. Run by a cheerful older man flipping thin, golden cakes onto parchment and folding them around fruits, creams, and honeyed nuts. 2, Inigo said, pointing to a fruit and cream variety topped with powdered sugar. He handed one to Lyra, who examined it skeptically. You eat it with your hands? It's a crepe, not a potion bottle. Try it. She took a small bite and paused. Then another. It's sweet. That's generally the idea. They sat on the edge of a low fountain in the plaza, watching people pass. Nearby, children chased each other around flower carts, and a few armored knights laughed over drinks on a tavern porch. You've done this before, Lyra said after a while, still working on her crepe. What? Shopping. No. Living. You walk through this world like it's not new to you. Inigo shrugged. It's complicated. Another realm? She asked again, without teasing this time. He looked at her, expression unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, another world entirely. Where do you really come from? I see a lot of weapons, but most certainly not with those types, Lyra said, munching her crepe. You wouldn't understand if I explained this to you. No, more like you wouldn't believe my story, Inigo said. Try me, Lyra challenged. Inigo shook his head. Still wouldn't want to reveal that he is from another world. He leaned back against the cool stone edge of the fountain, eyes fixed on the gently rippling water. He twirled the remains of his crepe between his fingers, gaze distant. I've been places that don't have mana, he said slowly. Where swords are decorations, not tools. Where wars are fought from a distance with machines, and people live packed into cities that scrape the sky. Lyra blinked. A realm without mana? He nodded. No elves. No dragons. No magic academies. Just systems. Devices. Cold steel and logic. My weapons are from there. She was silent for a beat, studying him. That's a lot to take in. Which is why I don't usually say anything, Inigo murmured. But you've earned the right to hear a piece of it. Lyra took another bite, chewed, and swallowed. It explains a lot. How calm you are in a fight. The way you analyze things like every step is already planned. As much as he wanted to admit that it was the influence of the system which made him able to do things that he hadn't done before, he couldn't. Of course, there was already an impression on Lyra of how reliable he was in the fight. He wouldn't want to risk destroying that. Yeah. I wonder where that place is really from. Somewhere far away, but I don't think of it now as I am focusing on the present. Which is this, Inigo replied. Lyra didn't say anything at first. She just watched him, eyes soft, her usually guarded face unguarded for once. You don't have to carry it all alone, you know, she said gently. Are you already attached to me emotionally like that? Inigo chuckled. SEA the novelfire.net * website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lyra rolled her eyes, but there was no real annoyance in the gesture. Don't flatter yourself, she said, though the corners of her mouth twitched upward. Inigo chuckled. I'm just saying, you're getting a little soft on me. I'd rather call it practical trust, she said smoothly, finishing the last bite of her crepe. But I guess there are worse people to trust. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, watching a group of children splash at the fountain's far end. I don't know where any of this is going, Lyra. This world, our party, our future mission. But for the first time since I arrived here, it feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She remained quiet after that. Eventually, Lyra stood. We will see each other tomorrow. And I prefer that when we see each other tomorrow, I see you completely. Not that hooded figure. Wyvern Quest the sun crested over the rooftops of Alandra, casting a golden hue across the cobblestone streets as the city stirred with fresh energy. Market carts rolled into place, shopkeepers lifted shutters, and the scent of baked bread and boiled spice drifted on the early breeze. At the Adventurers Guild, Inigo adjusted the strap on his new long coat, the polished silver badge of Ebon Vanguard catching a glint of sunlight. He stepped into the hall with calm, measured strides, Lyra appearing a heartbeat later behind him. Her hood down this time, silver hair unbound and gleaming like starlight. You remembered, Inigo said, offering a half-smile. You asked, she replied simply, brushing a strand of hair behind one pointed ear. Elise spotted them immediately and handed over a sealed scroll. The scouts confirmed intermittent wyvern activity at Windspire Cliffs. It's not a confirmed nest, but something's disturbed the area. Locals won't go near it. Perfect, Inigo said, accepting the quest scroll. Any other details? Just this, Elise added, handing over a crude map with markings on the outer cliffs. There's an old watchtower near the ridge. You might want to use it for observation, and try not to antagonize the wildlife unless you have to. Noted, Lyra said, her tone sharp with focus. They left the guild shortly after, heading west out of the city and into the rolling hills. The trek was long, but not unpleasant. The sky was clear, the air crisp. They moved in silence for much of the journey, conserving energy and scanning the path ahead. By midday, the hills gave way to rocky terrain. Jagged stone formations jutted from the earth, wind howling between crevices. The Windspire Cliffs lived up to their name, harsh, exposed, and hauntingly beautiful. There, Lyra pointed from atop a low ridge. That's the tower. A crumbling stone structure clung to the cliffside, its top half sheared away by some long-forgotten storm, but its foundation still stood strong, offering cover and vantage. They approached cautiously. Inigo activated his scope and scanned the skies. Movement, he muttered. 3 shapes. Gliding. Lyra knocked an arrow. Distance. 400 meters. Too far to shoot. They haven't noticed us yet. They reached the base of the tower and climbed to the second level. From there, they had a clear view of the cliffs and the wyverns circling high above. They're scouting, Lyra said, watching the pattern. Looking for something. Food, Inigo replied. Or territory. Either way, we need to confirm their numbers and if there's a nest. They waited, observed. Then the wind shifted and so did everything else. A loud screech tore through the sky as one of the wyverns banked sharply and dove straight for the cliffs. They saw something, Inigo said, rising to his feet. Or someone. From the far side of the ridge, a scream echoed, human. Damn it! Inigo cursed, sprinting down the stairs with Lyra close behind. Someone's out there. They raced along the cliffside, navigating loose gravel and steep drops. As they rounded a bend, the scene came into view, 3 riders, cornered by one of the wyverns. Their horses were panicked, one already down. A young man with a short sword tried to hold the beast back as it lashed out with its barbed tail. Cover me, Inigo barked. Lyra dropped to one knee, drawing back an arrow. Go! He sprinted forward. The wyvern turned its gaze on him just as Lyra's arrow struck its wing membrane, forcing it to shriek and falter. Inigo slid to a stop, drew his Desert Eagle and fired. Bang, bang, bang. Each shot landed with brutal precision, forcing the creature to rear back. It flapped wildly, trying to regain altitude, but not before Lyra's second arrow caught it beneath the eye. It screeched, turned tail, and fled into the skies. The riders were shaken, but alive. One of them, barely 16, stared at Inigo like he'd seen a ghost. Tach, thank you. Get to safety, Inigo ordered. Now. They didn't need to be told twice. As the group fled, Lyra joined him. Nicely done, she said. You always shoot that clean? Only on days ending in Y. She rolled her eyes but smiled anyway. They climbed back to the tower, breath still short. We'll need to return to confirm the threat level, Inigo said. They're aggressive, protective. There's a nest nearby for sure. Lyra pulled out the map and marked the ridge. We'll report this. But if the guild sends someone to cull them, we'll take the quest. And if we are going to hunt every wyverns in this area, I will have to replace my weapons suitable for this task. Weapons? So you have more than 2? Lyra asked. Inigo could have replied that he has the whole arsenal of the United States of America and other countries, but that would be too ridiculous for her to hear. By the time they returned to Alandra, dusk had just begun to paint the sky in soft streaks of violet and gold. The city was alive with evening energy, vendors calling out the last of their wares, lanterns flickering to life, and the guild hall pulsing with the low murmur of returning adventurers. Inigo pushed open the heavy doors of the Adventurers Guild, Lyra following close behind. The warmth of the hall enveloped them, the scent of parchment, leather, and cooked meat welcoming after the chill of Windspire's cliffs. Elise looked up from the counter the moment she saw them. You're back earlier than expected, she said, eyebrows rising as she took in the dust on their cloaks and the fatigue on their faces. That's either a good sign or a very bad one. We found the wyverns, Inigo replied, and confirmed aggression. He unrolled the rough map Lyra had marked and spread it across the counter. 3 active flyers. They've claimed territory around the cliffs. At least one attacked a traveling party. We intervened. No casualties, but it was close. Saw the Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Elisa's lips thinned as she examined the map. You sure they're nesting? I'd bet on it, Lyra said, her voice steady. They're territorial. The moment the wind changed, they moved in fast. They're protecting something. I'll inform the guildmaster, Elise said, already reaching for a quill. Wait here. As she disappeared into the back office, Inigo glanced sideways at Lyra. She was quiet, arms folded, silver hair brushing her shoulders as she looked out over the guild hall. Think they'll send someone else? She asked. Inigo shook his head. They'd be fools to send anyone else when we've already mapped the cliffs. We know what we're dealing with. More importantly, we know where to start. A few minutes later, Elise returned. This time with a fresh scroll stamped with red wax and a new seal. The Guildmaster agrees. The Wyvern activity qualifies for a B-rank subjugation quest, she said, handing it over. He's assigning it directly to Ebon Vanguard. That's you. Inigo accepted it, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. Terms: 2 gold up front, 3 more upon completion. Additional bonus for confirmed elimination of the nesting site. Lyra nodded. That's fair. We will take the quest. New weapon. The road back to Windspire Cliffs felt different the second time. Search the novel_fire.et website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. They rode in silence atop 2 rented steeds, the clop of hooves muffled by the packed dirt and the occasional breeze that swept through the tall grass. Alandra shrank behind them, swallowed by rolling hills and distant treelines. Ahead, the familiar sharp silhouettes of Windspire jutted into the sky like broken fingers. The air grew colder with each hour. Lyra rode a pace ahead, her silver hair tied back this time, swaying slightly with the rhythm of the horse beneath her. She didn't speak much, not since they accepted the subjugation quest. Her focus was sharper now, intent. Inigo, meanwhile, adjusted his coat and checked his system notifications silently. Quest accepted. Wyvern subjugation. Confirmed nest. Objective: eliminate threat. Bonus for complete nest clearance. Advance payment: 2 gold coins, received. Inventory access, available. Token balance, 3,205. He glanced up at Lyra's back and smiled faintly to himself. A partner and a sniper. That's what I need. He glanced up at Lyra's back and smiled faintly to himself. A partner and a sniper. That's what I need. By dusk, they reached the outskirts of the cliffs. The wind had picked up, sharper now, and the shadows stretched long across the rocks. With the sun dipping low, they decided not to press toward the nest immediately. We'll rest here for the night, Inigo said. Too risky to move under moonlight with aerial threats. Lyra nodded in agreement. I'll set up a perimeter alarm. Basic mana thread, woven between stakes. If anything crosses, it'll snap and flare. We'll know. They worked in tandem, Inigo clearing a small area between the boulders, stacking rocks for a windbreak while Lyra pulled out a compact bedroll and light tarp. A small fire crackled between them shortly after, casting warm light over the narrow camp. As the stars began to glitter above, they shared a simple meal. Dried meat, flatbread, and water poured from metal flasks. The silence wasn't awkward, just calm, familiar. I'll take first watch, Inigo said, brushing crumbs off his lap. Lyra raised a brow. Confident I won't stab you in your sleep? He smirked. I'm hoping you'd at least let me wake up before you do it. She chuckled lightly, and that sound, so rare, caught him off guard. You know, she said, settling into her bedroll with her back to the wind. I've traveled with a few teams before, temporary groups, mercenary contracts. None of them ever made me laugh. Maybe they weren't funny. No, maybe I didn't let them. The fire crackled between them. She rolled to her side, facing the flames, the corner of her blanket pulled just under her nose, her eyes half-lidded. Inigo. Yeah, don't die tomorrow. The words were soft, almost lost in the wind. He looked at her through the firelight and gave a small nod. I wasn't planning on it. An hour passed. The cliffs beyond were quiet, only the wind and the occasional cry of nocturnal birds breaking the silence. Lyra slept soundly, face softened by the glow of the fire. Inigo sat on a stone nearby, rifle across his lap. But his mind was elsewhere, deep within his system. Weapon shop, open. Sort by, long-range / cost under 3,000 tokens. He scrolled through digital listings of firearms, many of which had once only existed in his world. Bolt actions, semi-autos, anti-material rifles. Until one caught his eye. M110 semi-automatic sniper system. Effective range, 800 m. Ammo, 7.62 mm NATO. Scope, night vision plus thermal overlay. Silencer, optional attachment. Cost, 2,850 tokens. Perfect. Purchase confirmed. M110 SAS added to inventory. A shimmer of light briefly illuminated his lap, and the matte black sniper materialized. Sleek, deadly, balanced. He held it reverently, checking the scope, the grip, the mag. This was the tool he needed to deal with airborne threats like wyverns. Silently, he loaded a magazine, checked the action, then stored it back into his system. Lyra shifted in her sleep, muttering something unintelligible. Inigo turned, suddenly aware of how quiet the world had become. Her silver hair spilled across the bedroll, her face calm, lips parted slightly with sleep. The fire's light danced across her cheek. He stared too long. "I know you're watching," Lyra mumbled sleepily, eyes still closed. Inigo blinked. "I wasn't." She cracked one eye open. "You're a terrible liar." "Habit," he replied, clearing his throat. A beat. "Was I snoring?" she asked, her voice still slurred with drowsiness. "No, just talking in your sleep." "What did I say?" "You called me a muscle-headed cloak thief." Her eyes flew open as her brow furrowed. "I did not." He grinned. "No, you didn't, but it's funny watching you believe it." Lyra sighed, rolling to face away from him. "I'm going back to sleep. If you fall asleep on your watch, I will turn your coat into a tent." "Noted," he said, laughing under his breath. As the wind continued to whistle through the cliffs, Inigo adjusted his seat, rifle leaning against the stone nearby, and gazed out into the darkness. Tomorrow would be a hunt, but tonight was peaceful, and he would protect it. The fire had begun to burn low, its embers pulsing softly like the heartbeat of the camp. Inigo added another stick to keep it alive, the crackle breaking the rhythm of the wind for just a moment. The chill deepened, curling around his boots and creeping into the folds of his coat. He didn't mind it. His eyes scanned the cliffs beyond. Nothing stirred. But his mind was still processing the earlier encounter. The screaming rider, the flash of talons. If they were lucky, tomorrow would only bring one more confrontation. If not, he reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a cloth, quietly polishing the barrel of his sidearm. "Don't die tomorrow," Lyra had said. He glanced toward her again. She was asleep, really asleep this time. No playful quips, no half-lidded teases. Just quiet breathing and the peaceful stillness of someone who trusted him to stand watch. A strange warmth settled in his chest. "Yeah," he whispered. "You don't have to worry." With his weapons prepped and his resolve firm, Inigo settled in for the long night. Killing wyverns, the morning sun rose like a blade, slicing through the chill mist that clung to Windspire cliffs. Inigo stirred the fire one last time before stamping it out with his boot. The sky above was clear, too clear. A hunter's sky, no cover for anything that flew. Lyra yawned softly as she sat up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Her hair had fallen from its tie during the night and now framed her face like silvered silk. She blinked at the brightness, then glanced toward Inigo, who was rechecking his gear in that focused, meticulous way of his. And then she noticed it. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Inigo looked up, his hand still resting on the weapon laid across his lap. The matte black body of the M110 glinted faintly in the sunlight. "This," he said casually, brushing imaginary dust from the scope. "Something I brought along. I've never seen it before." Inigo shrugged. "It's always been with me. I just didn't have a reason to bring it out until now." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is it like the other one? The smaller one with the impossible recoil?" He smiled faintly. "Something like that." She didn't press further, but her gaze lingered a few seconds longer than usual. By mid-morning, they had broken camp and descended further into the cliffs. The wind screamed along the ridgelines, tugging at their cloaks and sending loose gravel tumbling down the slopes. The climb was slow and deliberate, each step calculated. They had marked the likely nest site the day before, a jagged outcropping veiled by stone and wind. A good vantage, a better hiding place. Inigo took point, rifle slung across his back beneath the long coat. Lyra moved behind him, quiet as a shadow, her bow always within arm's reach. "We're getting close," she said, pausing to listen. Her ears twitched. "I hear wing beats." Inigo raised a hand, signaling a halt. They crouched behind a ridge and peeked over. There it was, the nest, built into the spine of a broken cliff face. It was a grotesque mound of bone, feathers, and rock. At least 2 wyverns visible, curled around eggs the size of barrels. A third prowled the outer perimeter, wings half-furled. 3 adults confirmed, Inigo murmured. "Eggs too. Do we eliminate the nest?" Lyra asked, her tone even, but there was a faint tightness in her jaw. "We do what we must," Inigo said. But first we thin them out. He unslung the sniper and lay flat along the rock, extending the bipod and peering through the scope. The heat signatures flared immediately. Pulse rates, movement, wing muscle shifts. He exhaled. First shot's mine. Once I fire, they'll scatter. You take the high path and pick off anything that tries to flank. Lyra nodded and moved without another word, scaling a narrow ledge that wound around to an elevated perch. Inigo centered his crosshairs on the sentinel wyvern's eye. His head tilted slightly as if sensing something. Too late. He squeezed the trigger. Crack. The shot ripped through the air, deafening even with the suppressor. The wyvern's skull snapped backward, and it crumpled mid-step. Chaos erupted. The other two shrieked and launched skyward, wings slicing wind as they rose in spiral bursts of fury. Inigo rolled left, chambered the next round, and sighted the second. Another pull. Crack. This one clipped the beast's wing, sending it tumbling down the cliffside, smashing through stone and debris. The third wyvern shrieked and dived, heading straight for Inigo. He ducked, unslinging the rifle and switching to his sidearm in one fluid motion. But before he could fire, cthnovelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Thwip. An arrow embedded in the creature's neck, glowing red with flame. Then another and another. Lyra stood atop her perch, face unreadable, her bow singing death with every pull. Inigo fired twice more. The wyvern collapsed in a cloud of dust, its last scream echoing across the cliffs. Silence followed, except for the wind. He stood slowly, brushing grit from his coat. You all right? Lyra called, already climbing down to him. Alive, he said, and impressed. She eyed the sniper still in his hands. So, when did you say you got that again? Inigo offered a nonchalant shrug. Let's just say I don't show all my cards on the first hand. Lyra raised an eyebrow, but instead of arguing, she merely nodded. Remind me not to play poker with you. They approached the nest carefully, weapons drawn, in case any stragglers remained. The eggs were intact. Inigo stared at them for a long moment. Do we destroy them? Lyra asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then slowly he nodded. We came here to eliminate the threat. That includes potential threats. Lyra drew in a quiet breath and stepped forward. Together they worked in silence, efficient, methodical. She laid enchanted fire arrows gently between the eggs, while Inigo poured a light arc of oil around the perimeter. A single spark was enough. The nest ignited with a muffled whoosh, flames licking upward, the crackle loud against the wind. Smoke began to rise, curling into the sky like a black signal of finality. Inigo stepped back, watching the flames. No hatchlings, no loose ends. Lyra didn't look away. It feels cruel, she said, voice steady but hushed. But I understand. It's not about cruelty, Inigo replied. It's about preventing more riders from screaming on these cliffs. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was reflective. When the flames died to embers, they turned to leave. Their boots crunched across gravel and scorched bone as they descended the ridge. The climb back to the path was slow, but the wind had lost its teeth. The sun crept higher behind them, and the shadows of Windspire finally began to shorten. At the base, Inigo paused and looked back one last time at the blackened ruin of the nest. Lyra stood beside him. Do you ever think about what your world would do with something like this? He blinked, caught off guard. You mean the wyverns? No, your weapons. The power to erase something from range with one pull of a trigger. He hesitated. They already have it. She glanced at him, but he didn't elaborate. She didn't push. The silence returned, but this time it was comfortable. By midday, they reached their horses, and the long ride back to Elandra began. There were few words spoken, only the sound of hooves on stone and the distant cry of birds overhead. And it was